Welcome to NFL Daily, where we just can't help ourselves. I'm Gregg Rosenthal, back in Los Angeles, and thrilled to be joined by my friend, boots on the ground in Philadelphia, the host of the PHLY Eagles podcast. It's Bo Wulf. You'll know him and you love him.
I hope so. Thanks for having me.
I just felt like we need to finish this circle, Bo.
Yeah.
We need to close the championship circle. And you've been on the show throughout this Eagles run, and I wasn't done talking about this Eagles team, but then they popped up in the news. We'll talk a little Kellen Moore, some stray final thoughts. I want to hear what the locker rooms, was like after the game, everything post-game. We're going to do a hastily constructed list of the best Super Bowl winners since the last time the Super Bowl was in New Orleans. I just felt like that's a good cutoff.
Okay.
That was that Ravens one, because leaving that game that night, I'm trying not to be hyperbolic. Some of the listeners think I'm hyperbolic. I'm thinking, is that like the best Super Bowl team in a decade? So I had to make a list, very hastily constructed. You can help me through that. But yeah, let's start with the Eagles. Just normally, like, to the victory goes the spoils here, Bo. But for you, the spoils is like a second podcast, just hours after you get back from Philadelphia when your family is probably angry on you.
Yeah, I got 4 hours of sleep last night, so I'm feeling pretty good. That's much better than Super Bowl night. Yeah.
Walk
Let's
me
do
through
it.
a little bit. What was the post Super Bowl experience like for you and for the Eagles? And yes, we are going to get to Kellen Moore pretty soon. I do want to get to that because it's very Eagles related, and it's the biggest news of the day. He will be the Saints head coach. But let's go through the Eagles stuff first.
So the post-game locker room itself was a wild scene, and you really appreciate it, right? Because you look around the room, and as they're all spraying champagne and dancing, and they've all got cigars, smokes fill the air. Like, my clothes still smell like cigars. You look around the room, and everybody has a story, right? Like, not just the top of the roster players like AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, but like the bottom of the roster players like Isaiah Rodgers and Oren Burks, guys like that. But all the coaches, all the support staff, all the front office people, like every single person in there, like, this is what they go to work every day for, is a job, is a night like this. And their families, it extends so far beyond that. Like, it is all in service of and in sacrifice for getting to this moment. And so you look around the room and you appreciate it. I can only compare it to the winning Super Bowl locker room after the 2017 Eagles won it all. And that one was a celebration, but it wasn't quite so boisterous, I would say. It was a little bit more muted. Like, Doug Peterson gave a little speech afterwards. Like, there was no speech to be made this time around, as the music was blaring and C.J. Gardner-Johnson's in the middle. Practice squad safety Andre Sam, I feel like, was the star of the show, who was like really all over the place. And then there's AJ Brown was in the middle for a little bit, but for the most part, he was just sort of sitting in his locker, sort of in contemplation, and talking with a couple members of the training staff. And I think it was sort of a reflection of he was playing through a lot of pain at the end of the season, and probably needed to do a lot to get through it. Lane Johnson's a little bit off to the side. He's the veteran here. This is like the cementing of his Hall of Fame resume to some degree. But it was fun to watch. It was fun to be a part of. And then Big J Journos that Zach and I found ourselves at the the Eagles after party at the team
okay.
hotel.
I haven't heard about this. Yeah.
And to me, and I wrote about this on allphly.com. Now, in the post-game locker room, Nick Sirianni is a little bit more muted. This was a players thing, but when it gets to 2 a.m. at the team party, Nick was feeling himself a little bit. He goes on stage, he's popping locking to buy you a drink, and he's singing all the words to My Prerogative. And like, if anybody has ever deserved it to like celebrate, it is Nick Sirianni, because he's been doubted so much. And there's a delightful irony here, Greg, that you will appreciate, because, they're among the stars who were there that night. You've got Shane Gillis is there, and Pete Davidson's there. But who else was there? Bill Belichick. And so Bill Belichick, the guy who was essentially threatening and maybe back channeling to take Nick Sirianni's job 13 months ago, is there as Nick Sirianni is the head coach on top of the world, and I think there's a delightful irony in that for Sirianni's sake.
Now, did they have a moment together? Do you have any idea?
No, listen,
Belichick and
I wasn't
Sirianni?
there all night. I was only there for like the last hour. But I don't think so. But I haven't heard honestly either way. I can't say one way or another.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should hit up our mutual friend for like an invite to that, but I was feeling a little cashed out by like 1 a.m. It's not my freaking party, anyways.
Right.
I was like, I also knew I had a sleeping wife and son in the room that would have been even more annoyed when I woke them up at 3 or 4 in the morning instead of 1. But either way,
Right.
I did not ask to go. It's funny you mentioned it. Okay, that's taking us in a different direction. But how close do you think that ever was to happening? Because the fact that there was a conversation between Howie Roseman and Bill Belichick is pretty astounding, frankly. It that shows maybe it's just them giving him the respect and Bill Belichick sort of back channeled as you're implying. But to me, I read that as that's something they're considering doing, which is a wild door not taken. And they obviously look at the coaching position differently than most organizations. You guys have helped inform me of that over the years. And it's kind of obvious that they chose these coordinators, not Nick. So how close do you think it was to a totally wild and I'm sure less successful, because it couldn't have been more successful,
Right.
door number 2?
I don't think that it was ever super close, but I did have the framing last year that I think if they were ever going to do it, it would have been last year because you looked at what they did with the coordinators, right? You had Vic Fangio and you had Kellen Moore, the most turnkey options on the market, right? Because I think they believed in their hearts that this was a Super Bowl caliber roster, and so what they needed was somebody to keep it on the rails. And so the Vic Fangio version of a head coach in that situation would obviously have been Bill Belichick. Now, I don't think that would have been a lasting marriage because, as we've talked about, like this is a GM centric organization. I think they would have eventually butted heads as to who's in charge of stuff. But my understanding is also that this was probably more of a Jeff Lurie fascination than a Howie Roseman one. Even though I think Howie Roseman has a good relationship with Bill Belichick, I think all indications are that Howie was one of the ones who was fighting on behalf of keeping Nick Sirianni. I think he thinks they have a good working relationship. You could play Machiavellian and think that it's because it's somebody that he knows will sort of just worry about coaching and not try to get involved in the front office, and he can hire the coaches. But if we want to, when we do pivot to Kellen Moore, I think that's an interesting part of who has the power here in how they go about backfilling Kellen Moore.
Yeah, that will be telling. And now Sirianni's going to be like one of the highest paid coaches in NFL history. How can he not?
He deserves to be. He deserves to be on stage, like puffing out his chest. He did it. I mean, it's unbelievable. I know we will get to like thinking of this team big picture, but I mean, the truth is they didn't lose a game all season long when Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown both played the entire game. Like,
now I listened to your post show. I heard that one, and that's true. And going through this list of the recent champions, I sorted it more on just like in a given week, who would you be afraid to play? And this Eagles team, spoiler alert, is high on that list. I think the resume also matters. And they only lost 3 games. One of them is with Jalen Hurts getting hurt halfway through and they blow it. Although it was the defense that blew that game. One of them
they did force 5
was Saquon Barkley dropping the ball. That happens. Every team has a loss kind of like that, but they probably should have won that game. The other one, though, I'll push back on it. They got wiped out by the Bucs.
Totally,
AJ Brown's not saving them that game. But it's also week 4. I think this whole season for the Eagles is a week 5 onward conversation, which is very similar to another team very high on my list. Spoiler alert, the 2014 Patriots, who went 2-2, and that was the year everyone was like, is Belichick losing it? They actually asked him a question about benching Brady after going 2-2, which it was my friend Tom Curran, which was amazing. And after that, they were one of the best Patriots teams ever. And this Eagles team, after they put Cooper DeJean in, after they just started improving since that week 5, were one of the best teams ever. I do wonder if part of the reason they wouldn't have gone down the Belichick road is just like they had Fangio there, and he was their white whale. Right. And it is really funny as we transition a little bit, and if you have more thoughts on stuff after the game, I'm happy to hear it, because that's stuff you have that no one else does. But rewatching that game and thinking about the game, it's funny how much credit Fangio gets deservedly for this defense he built, and yet how much the game plan was like not that important. He is calling back to a time in the NFL when it's not about look how smart all these coaches are. They have to run the fewest amount of coverages in the league, and in that game especially, they just ran what they ran. Like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid knew exactly what the Chiefs were doing the entire game. There was no trickery. There was no blitzing. There's barely any like of the sim pressures or even the fancier stuff they do. Like they're just going out and playing like 1980s style defense, and they're just awesome at executing it. So the coaching and the genius to me is in everything that Vic Fangio and this entire coaching staff did all season long to develop these players and kind of get them playing so in sync and so fast. They're just one of the best defenses ever. I think that's safe to say at this point.
I think so too, and I think certainly in the conversation for best defense of the 2000s, especially if you're looking week 6 on after they came back from the bye. I think there are a few important things to unpack there. One, I mean they did do something like there was some front mechanics that were different. They changed some of the linebacker roles just a little bit, but you're right. I mean they played like a ton of cover 4. They knew that up front they were just going to dominate. I think one thing that gets maybe a little bit underrated in just Vic Fangio came in and fixed this defense is the rest of the staff. And that was, you have to go back to, they go to the 2022 Super Bowl. They lose that game. And not only do you have to replace Jonathan Gannon, you have to replace Nick Rallis, who leaves as linebackers coach. Denard Wilson, who was in charge of the DBs, was essentially like the guy in waiting. And when he doesn't get the job, he leaves. And so I think the Eagles internally felt like last year, one of the big problems with their team was not just the coordinator, but was the staff. And so when Vic Fangio comes in this year, they replaced every position coach except for Jeremiah Washburn, the outside linebackers coach. You get Clint Hurt, who goes from defensive coordinator to defensive line coach. Bobby King takes over the linebackers. Christian Parker takes over the DBs, and he's a guy who a lot of people feel like is a future defensive coordinator, which reminds me, by the way, I don't know if you caught this. This was a very funny moment from your show the other night that I listened to. Jordan, I just wanted to call her out on this. She's talking about how young Joe Casper and Christian Parker are, and her frame of reference is they're so young, they're the same age as me, which is just a huge flex on how young she is.
And then Shook jumped in right away and was like, yeah, same age as me too. And I'm just like, oh, I guess it's just old Gregg and the whippersnappers at this point on the show. Yeah, I did not appreciate that whatsoever. But a fair point on that. Like they replaced every single position coach, and it like Bill Belichick, it would have been impossible to do a better job with this team than Fangio did. All I meant was just like that. Like they're playing pretty old school football.
It was I mean, this game was a talent outperforms everything. Like they were just so much more talented than the Chiefs. I think my favorite encapsulation of that was. So there's it's 10-0 and they get that immaculate drive where it's sack, Cooper DeJean pick 6. And that sack drive was the first time that they rotated in their B team on the defensive line. And so you've got Joe Tooney at left tackle, who's getting like offensive player of the year votes from his boys. Like, wow, you can't beat this guy. And he's getting just run over by the third defensive end, rookie 3rd round pick, Jalen Hunt, who's an improving player. But like, if you're just holding up like who's one of the best players on this team versus like who's like the 13th best player on this defense, and he's just running them over.
That's a real thing that happened. Was not covered on the show. Both Tom Brady and was it Rodney Harrison? No, it's Teddy Bruschi. I forget which ex-Patriot voted Joe Tooney on their offensive player of the year ballot, which is just stupid. I mean, he's a really good guard, but just come on. He was a weakness. I mean, he is an example of their biggest issue over the last stretch was they ended up just like blowing up their offensive line in multiple spots because they made a bad draft pick. They haven't been able to develop that position, and that was a problem. I love all that. By the way, I love that you mentioned A.J. Brown, how he was emotional in the locker room too, because our interview on audio, I don't know if it came across as well as it did for me on video, just that like his face was taking everything in that moment, and it meant he really seemed like, to your point, maybe fighting through the injury, but it reminded me a lot of Aaron Rodgers after he won his Super Bowl, which was the most human I ever saw him in the locker room, in the corner, kind of taking it all in, and you could just see it all on his face in a way that you could with AJ Brown there too. Let's talk about the game, because there were a few things that I just wish, and we're not going to go back through it too often or ever again. Who knows? I'm sure it'll come up, but like at this level that I wish I had gotten into, just sort of the numbers. I think, like, we know the defense played well, but when I look at Aaron shots, and that was easily the best defensive performance in the first half of a Super Bowl ever. And of course it was, because they forced more turnovers than they gave up first downs. And then it finishes
Chiefs got
up
a first down on the first play of scrimmage, and then didn't get another first down the whole half.
Here's one that I love. The Chiefs didn't run a play in the Eagles territory for the first 9 drives of the game. That was the only game all season that happened in the NFL. And to me, 9 drives is actually the perfect number, because 9 drives is your average Chiefs game. They play way less possessions. And it always stuck in my head, too, last year, how their offense did not show up in that game against 49ers. Through 9 drives, the 49ers defense had played awesome. I think they had given up 10 points, and one was on 3 were on a short field. It was like, wow, their defense played well enough to win the Super Bowl and then some. But because the Chiefs defense, it's a team game, held their end up of the bargain. Eventually they had time. Not this time. That's outrageous. That you can really say, other than garbage time, it was the worst performance potentially by any team in the NFL in any game this year. Patrick Mahomes at the Super Bowl. It's just,
it's unbelievable.
I don't know what to do with that, but it's embarrassing. It's a little embarrassing for the Chiefs. That's why I respect them for getting all those garbage time touchdowns, just to feel better about themselves. Like, I would have wanted to do that too if I were them, because it had to have been embarrassing to get bodied like that.
Yeah, I was talking to someone who was on the Chiefs sideline, and they said, like, after the Cooper DeJean pick six, like, they knew it was like this game is over, and they were just ejected. Now, it's interesting from a, like, what was their plan coming in. Fran Duffy broke this down on our on allphoy.com in a good way, and I think I saw it somewhere else, that, like, the plan for the defensive line coming into this game was, like, they are not strong enough. We are gonna bull rush them all game long. We're gonna go through them, not around them. Now, part of that is it also keeps Mahomes in the pocket, right? You're not giving him lanes to throw. But they knew, like, they cannot block us. And just, you talk about, like, the violence of this team. I know this is kind of like kind of basic, but it's why I thought the Eagles were going to win this game. Like, they're just the meaner team. They have been so violent the entire second half of the season. And I think the Eagles, from a roster construction standpoint, would give some of that to, like, some of the things that they care about in the draft. Like, we sort of laugh at, like, adding all these Georgia guys, but, like, this is what they're used to. And so, like, every single move worked. And even like, the one guy who had to go in as a backup, Oren Burks, in this game, who lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year after having to replace Dre Greenlaw when he suffers the injury, like, he was fine in this game. Quinyon Mitchell is, like, running stride for stride downfield with Xavier Worthy on that one first half play where they went play action to try to go to that deep shot, and you see Mahomes kind of cock it like he really wants to throw it, and he can't because Quinyon Mitchell's right there. Like, everybody on this team played at the high, like, the ceiling of their ability. And I think it's why when we get to the conversation of, like, where do they rank, there's a discrepancy between, like, the greatest team, like the arc of their resume, versus, like, the best team when they got to the Super Bowl. And I think this team at this point, it would be hard to beat them, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And even with those late touchdowns, they gave up 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes and one late in the third quarter. They still end up with the 4th best defensive DVOA for a game in the Super Bowl. And it was interesting to see what was 5th on that list was the Bucs versus the Chiefs. So
interesting. Now, DVOA, it is supposed to contextualize the win probability of the game itself. So I'm surprised.
Yeah, the opponent, the play to play. It does, but it doesn't count.
Not
on
a game by game basis.
It still counts a little bit for garbage time. But that to me is interesting. It just the Chiefs having 2 of their worst games of the Mahomes era in the Super Bowl is crazy. The last little thing I just want to say on the Super Bowl was Hurts's game was even better in retrospect than I thought at the time, because I think I was a little caught in that first half where I'm doing the radio and everything you just said about their pass rush, and I got the binoculars on, and it was so fun. The pass rush was so dominating. The game it reminded me most of, by the way, that I attended was actually Week 1 opener, Rams Bills of 2022 when they were defending their title, and that was just in terms of watching up front a defensive line just completely embarrass an offensive line. That was very similar. The Bills just crushed them. But that was like a Week 1 game setting up like a team that was going to be terrible that year, the Rams. And this was the Super Bowl. Hurts, though, like the rushing, you said like the Chiefs knew they were going to lose in the first half. I got to admit, like even coming into the second half, I was like, all right, let's see what the Chiefs do for the first drive. I didn't think it was over until they do nothing with their first drive, and then Hurts just starts making very quick decisions to run with their first drive, and they're racking up first downs. You're like, okay, this is over. And that was really part of a game where even though he held the ball at times, he made quick decisions. He made good decisions. And oh, by the way, he goes like 5 for 6 on plus 20-yard throws. And the more, rewatching them, I realized like, oh, those were just awesome throws. There's, to me, no question his 2 best games of the season were the last 2, which is just totally badass.
Absolutely. And the Dotson completion to me was an awesome one because it was the first big blitz Spags sent all game, and he makes that check. And I don't know that like people who haven't watched the Eagles all season realize how insane it was for him to check to a go ball to Jahan Dotson, who like he barely throws to. This was the first game all season long, if you don't count the Week 18 finale with the backups, in which Jahan Dotson had 2 catches that went for first downs. Like that's how uninvolved he's been in the offense. And it was a beautiful throw. The scrambles were huge, and obviously in part because of, they weren't getting a ton from Saquon Barkley, which again, I think speaks to like the talent disparity in this game. It felt like the Chiefs' game plan was, we are not going to let Saquon beat us on offense, and we are not going to let Jalen Carter beat us on defense. They're double teaming him every snap almost. And okay, the other 20 players on the field are just going to dominate every single one of their other individual matchups. And like you get like almost a 40-point game. I thought Hurts was outstanding. The go balls were awesome. I thought the shot to Devontae down the middle was, I talked about this team being mean. Like they really stepped on the throat there after the 4th down stop by Avonte Maddox.
That's like a tough catch and a tough throw. Like to have it in the right spot. People are killing like Jalen Watson for that. It's like, I mean, that's just like good offense beat. Like that's just a great throw. Perfect. Like where he always throws those deep balls in just the right spot. I mean, he's not a complete quarterback, but his strengths are so good. And the design runs were effective too. Like he is a good vertical runner. That helped them keep the chains moving.
The strength that he has throwing deep, which to me is like, as a passer, the best thing he does, makes it more mystifying why we didn't see more of this in the regular season. Like there was a stretch in the second half of the regular season where the Eagles threw the ball downfield, less often than almost every team in the league, which was kind of bizarre. The one other thing that worked out well for the Eagles in this game, and credit again to Fran Duffy for pointing this out, usually the story with Jalen Hurts as a passer is that the quicker he gets rid of the ball, the better he is. And the longer he holds onto the ball, the less effective he is. He's like towards the bottom of the league in EPA per pass when he holds onto the ball for 3 seconds or more, which is a little bit unexpected given that he is a creative player. You would think that as a mobile quarterback, he would be better at that. And in this game, he held on to the ball. I believe this was the 3rd longest time to throw that he had all season. But when he held on to the ball, he was way more efficient than he usually is, and that was a big factor in the game.
Yeah, too many one-on-one matchups. Let's pivot. That they just had a huge advantage. Let's pivot a little bit to just what's next out of this group. And both these teams have a lot of free agents, a lot of question marks coming into the offseason. We're gonna do full offseason previews for every team. But for the Eagles, who do you think is most likely to stay? I'm going to give you 6 starters. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Going through the different teams, like if you have more than 4 or more starters, that's actually more than average like transition over the course of an offseason in terms of guys you mostly would want to keep. And this is the case here. Josh Sweat, going to be a free agent. Milton Williams, going to be a free agent. Mekhi Becton, going to be a free agent. Zach Bond gonna be a free agent. Darius Slay, not going to be a free agent, but talks as if he is, like he thinks the Eagles are going to cut him or something is going to happen there. And then Dallas Goedert, just because you threw this out there, like would they ever want to move off of his contract? That would surprise me personally, because I just think he adds such an important dimension. Like, why would they choose to do that? But of that group, who kind of stands out to you as the most likely to go and the most likely to stay, however you want to answer it?
So I think Mekhi Becton is the least likely to stay,
Okay.
for several reasons. One is that like they're going to have to extend Cam Jurgens this offseason. They're already paying Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson at the top of the offensive line market. You can't pay everybody, and I think you can trust Jeff Stoutland to fill in somebody as the right guard between those two guys. Tyler Steen filled in this game and is fine. I think the Eagles wanted to take an offensive lineman early last year. I think they would like to do it.
He was not
this
fine
year.
in this game. I think he came in the very first rep. Chris Jones like embarrassed
That's
him.
fair.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't think they would like to enter next season with him as Plan A, but I think they trust that they can backfill that spot. Mekhi Becton was like a great 1 year Band-Aid. I don't think that they view him as worthy of like top of the market salary, unless they think he's the eventual Lane Johnson replacement, which I don't think they do. Milton Williams, I think, is also very unlikely to return. I think if you asked Howie Roseman, like one of his regrets from the past couple of years, I think they wish that they had extended him 2 years ago when they first could have. But he's going to get paid this offseason. I don't think they can afford him. He's going to be, I mean, he's 25 years old. He's going to be 26 in April. He is an ascending player. And they've got Jordan Davis coming back next year. Moro Ajema, who played very well in the postseason, is kind of a guy who can backfill there. And it's supposed to be a good defensive tackle class. I think they sort of trust that that's how they can approach it. I would also
It's a
be
good call.
surprised.
They usually get those deals done of like guys who are coming up on their roster that they maybe value higher than other teams. Like Josh Sweat was
a homegrown
one of those
lineman.
contracts.
Yeah, a homegrown lineman is not something that they usually let go. And so I think they were a little bit. I'm sure they tried. I don't know if it was. I don't know what the negotiations were like, but I think they regret that a little bit. I also don't think Josh Sweat is coming back. In part because they made him take a pay cut last offseason. So I think there might be some acrimony there. Then again, Sweat hired Drew Rosenhaus, so that probably means that any bad feelings are done on that front. But it also means that Rosenhaus will make sure that Sweat gets the most money, and I don't think that the Eagles will be the ones who offer him the most money. I think Slay is an interesting one. I think the plan heading into the season was probably to post June 1st release him this offseason. Saves a good chunk of money. You've got Quinyon Mitchell, you've got Cooper DeJean, you've got Keely Ringo coming up. They could also re-sign Isaiah Rodgers. But I do think that there is potential mutual interest in like a restructure for a 1 year deal if Slay wants to go out just on his terms with the Eagles. I think that's possible. Goddard, I think they would like to restructure him. He's got no guaranteed money. And so I think there is a real possibility that they move on. And if they're looking to create room, I do think that's a place to do it. He's just been so injury prone. He hasn't played a full season. I think he's played one full season the last 5 years. And so I think that's a place where they could look to make a change and get younger. And then Bond is a really interesting one to me because we know that
he's not going anywhere. I don't care. They'll franchise tag him. So he's number one on my list of
but
guys.
You can't franchise tag him because the franchise numbers is for edge rushers. Right?
Whatever.
It's like a $20+ million thing.
So what? That's fine. Give Zach Bond $20+ million for a year.
I don't think. I think
he was
Bond,
worth it. I think if you had to pick one most valuable player on their defense, I guess Jalen Carter would be up there.
I think it's probably Jalen Carter.
I mean,
Bond is number 2.
Hey, who was the Defensive Player of the Year finalist? It was Zach Bond. It didn't slow down in the playoffs.
He was awesome. I think he's
kind
the
of
one.
Unlocked them. I honestly think he would be very difficult for Vic Fangio to replace. And they will, this is just my opinion, but I think they will look at him as somewhat irreplaceable and just give him a ton of money.
I think he is the one who they are most willing to go like above what they're comfortable for, but they're also going to have a number. And what's really hard to figure out with Zach Bond is what the market's going to be like. Because this is a 29-year-old who has done this for 1 year at a position that is not usually hugely valued on the open market.
It's not that hard. It's not that
if
hard.
Some team comes out and offers him $20 million, I don't think the Eagles are going to match that. But I think that they would love to try. I think they're going to try to spoil him before free agency hits, see if they can get him to come back. And
Mm.
you also have to wonder, Zach Bond, this is his chance to cash in, but he's also seen the other side of like what it's like. How much is he willing to take any kind of discount to be back with Vic Fangio?
I think he will have a huge market. I think off-ball linebackers are kind of coming back in style like running backs. It's just hard to find 3-down linebackers. There's enough Fangio-like teams out there that can convince themselves that he fits perfectly as, okay, we don't have to change our lineup. He can play on the line. He can back up. He unlocks it.
Will he be at the top of those four on your top 100? Will he be ahead of Sweat and Milton Williams?
Milton Williams will be high. Just a young pass rusher who's just coming off a great year. Yeah, probably. I mean, I know it was only 1 year, but you got to evaluate what he did and how valuable he was. I don't think they'll ever let him go. I really don't. Whatever the off-ball linebacker market is, we'll agree to disagree that he'll get like $30 million guaranteed on like a 3-year, $50 million deal or something like that, where he's making 16 or 17
That's
per
not crazy.
year. Yeah, and they'll get that done like next week. Don't even wait.
I do think he's the one that they would most like to have back.
That would be crazy. Don't let him go. The Chiefs quickly. It's crazy. We'll be covering this plenty as it happens. But Kelsey, at this point, you have to think is more likely to retire than not. Trey Smith is going to be a top of a lot of free agent lists. Although I asked around, and there is a little bit of a buzz that like was not Trey Smith's best year. This is something that basics like me and you might not totally know, but like he's not coming off a good year for Trey Smith, so that'll be interesting. Justin Reed, Nick Bolton, Wharton, who I thought had an awesome, very similar to Milton Williams, but just a little lower level, but had an awesome postseason, and he's going to be a free agent. Nuke Hopkins, Omenahu, Derek Nottie, like a lot of guys who played a lot of snaps for them. It's going to be a transition year. They have to fix their offensive line again, so I think they're working a little uphill. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back with Kellen Moore talk, and then yes, we're gonna do a little Rodgers, and we're gonna rank some Super Bowl teams. Back on NFL Daily, Bo's trying to sell me that Nick Bolton's 5 years younger than Zach Bond. Nick Bolton will get paid too. He's a great player, great young player. I gotta decide how I'm gonna rank these guys. This is not that show though. We've already gone too long just talking Eagles. Let's talk about them losing their offensive coordinator. We have our head coach in New Orleans. As I was leaving and I was, the city, and I was thinking about Sirianni on the podium telling Kellen, let's run this thing back. I was thinking, oh my God, what a crazy situation if Kellen Moore got really emotional and just decided to stay and the Eagles gave him the bag. Like it would then turn from one of the most embarrassing head coaching searches of all time to the most embarrassing head coaching search of all time. But Saints fans are absolutely thrilled, and I don't blame them considering what they've been through, that they have the Super Bowl champion offensive coordinator. What do you think after watching him up close, Bo, for a year of Kellen Moore as a head coach?
It's funny you said the thing about him getting emotional, because I was thinking back today, and I don't remember seeing him in the post-game locker room or at the party late night. So maybe he was like trying to avoid getting sucked in by sentimentality. I don't think that that's actually the case. I just didn't see him. I think Kellen Moore is going to be an interesting head coach experience, because I don't really know what to expect. From a like media standpoint, I mean, he's very vanilla. He does not give anything away. Like his press conferences this year were kind of notoriously bland. But, I did ask Nick Sirianni late in the season, like why he thinks Kellen Moore would be a good head coach. And one of the first things he mentioned, and maybe this is just how Nick Sirianni thinks about the position, was about how well he commands a room and how detailed he is. And so we'll see how those things happen. I don't think that he was particularly like the best, play designer necessarily this year.
You guys were unhappy with him. Philadelphia wasn't like thrilled with Kellen Moore for parts of this year.
Again, it's also you're untangling the Jalen Hurts, and then you see the Week 18 game plan, and it's all the bells and whistles that you were expecting. And Tanner McKee looks awesome, so maybe the Kellen Moore head coach offense will look a lot different than what it looked like here. Go ahead.
Wait, hold on for a second there. How annoyed are you that it was Kenny Pickett finishing out the Super Bowl and not your boy Tanner McKee? That was
Well,
his moment,
I don't.
and
They
he would
didn't
have
want to
picked
hurt.
up a first down.
They didn't want to hurt Jalen's feelings. If it was McKee and he lit it up, it was going to be, you get the whole offseason quarterback controversy. They couldn't handle that.
Yeah, I think they got to get rid of Kenny Pickett. Although the most fanciful
Maybe they sent him to New
conversation
Orleans.
I heard on your podcast over the last few weeks was, well, maybe they're trying to just make sure they preserve Kenny Pickett's trade value. That's why he's still the back. What trade value do you guys think Kenny Pickett has? No one's traded for Kenny Pickett.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like
maybe you get like a sixth. Yeah.
a 6th to 7th swap. That's what you got for him last year. His value hasn't gone up with the Eagles.
No, his value last year was like a late third. It was like a
Was
fourth
it?
round or an early fourth, maybe, based on
Wasn't
the
it a
swap.
swap
But yeah.
though? Didn't they?
It was a swap, but that's the
It was
value.
like a round back. It was ridiculous. He has no value. Though, yeah, maybe he.
Well,
goes
he's
there
cheap.
back up.
That's the value, is that he's on a rookie contract.
Yeah.
As for Kellen Moore, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what kind of staff he builds. It's always tough to build a staff this late in the cycle. It sounds like there's going to be some short-term pain, right, with that Saints roster. But I don't know. I'm honestly, I don't know what to expect from the Kellen Moore head coaching experience, because we haven't really learned that much about him.
He's an interesting case because he was a guy you thought would be the future Dallas Cowboys head coach at one point. He thought, by all accounts, that he would be a future Dallas Cowboys head coach, and then Brian Schottenheimer gets the job, and perhaps I've heard that seeing what happened with Slowick not getting the Cowboys job made him realize, like, well, if I can triple my salary or whatever it's going to be a lot more money, and have a chance to do it. There's no guarantee I ever get my chance. I'm going to take this opportunity. Maybe he brings in Doug Nussmeier, who was with him in Philadelphia on offense, and then Brandon Staley is reportedly the leading candidate for the defensive coordinator job. Staley hired him in a relatively disastrous season for both of them.
It's always funny when that flips, when the coordinator becomes the head coach and hires the head coach as the coordinator. I think that's always a funny dynamic.
Two young guys. We'll see. By the way, Schottenheimer hired. Who did he hire? Joe Brady, right? No, not Joe Brady.
No,
I mean Ken Dorsey.
No,
of course, he didn't hire Joe Brady. Ken Dorsey in Dallas. I like that staff that he's putting together. So shout out to Brian Schottenheimer. I'm like 15% higher than consensus on how it will go for him. I think he could be fine.
And I will note the thing that you will hear from the Eagles now is that this will be Jalen Hurts' 5th offensive coordinator in his 6 seasons in the NFL. And if you go back to his college career, it's 9 in 10.
Very similar to the career of Derek Carr, who Kellen Moore is inheriting, presumably. Some contrasting reports out there about how much Kellen Moore wants Derek Carr as his quarterback. I shouldn't even say reports. It's contrasting people that you talk to at the Super Bowl that seem to be well informed, but they don't agree on this, that maybe Kellen Moore said, I'm only taking that job, or he does not want Derek Carr. It's a very confusing situation with Mickey Loomis running that team with about as much power as anyone in the NFL, and Kellen Moore has to step into that. But he's been in weird spots before. He was the coach under Jason Garrett, did so well that he kept the job, but he kept it with Mike McCarthy, and then Mike McCarthy kind of slowly made it into his offense. Other people were saying that Jerry Jones had some input on that offense, and it's like he was extremely productive with the Cowboys. That should not be lost. He was there for 4 years. A couple of those teams were elite. Like, if you just go by points and yards, they were the best offense in the league. And even by the efficiency metrics, they were excellent. And he won with backups. He won with some backups, Andy Dalton at one point, and he won with Cooper Rush in Dallas. So, like, he's done it. I think the Saints did about as well as they could have. I'm looking forward to that. Before we move totally off the Eagles, what is the dumbest thing you've heard this week? Just maybe analysis of the game. If you want, I can start. It was more just dumbest thing I saw. I was walking on St. Charles yesterday. I had a very late flight, and I just saw in the windows in a bar, like the lower third for one of those, I believe it was first Get Up, and it said Is the GOAT debate over? Is it over? Like, now Brady's won it for good. It's over because of what your Eagles did to the Chiefs. Is it over? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That is the dumbest thing I've seen in the last.
It's extremely dumb. Yeah, I mean that's pretty high up there. I'm trying to think. I guess it would have been, conversation about Sirianni's job security heading into the Super Bowl. Like, if they lost the game, could he still be fired? That seems pretty unlikely. Other than that, I guess it's just the chest pounding of the Eagles had no chance in this game. Like, this game has already been played 2 years ago. They've got no shot, which turned out to be quite wrong.
Was there a lot of that? It was interesting because, look, we went 3 for 3 here on our picks for Game Day View and on NFL Daily and Game Day View, which are 5 different people. And yet I did look, and I think it was a very slight favoring the Chiefs in terms of the general cognoscenti. Maybe it was like 55-45, 60-40. So it wasn't a nobody believed in us. But it was a situation where the team wins so convincingly, kind of like that Seahawks win that keeps getting referenced, that everyone who picked the Chiefs probably feels a little stupid. Like I do.
Well, I will give you a little bit of gas here, in that I did see it come across my timeline, like the breakdown of who picked who, and it was like, oh, all the ball knowers picked the Eagles. It was the nameless faces who picked the Chiefs.
Well, I also like sticking with my picks if I believe in the overall structure and talent, and I picked the Eagles to win the Super Bowl in both 2022 and 2023 before the season. And this season I had them in the NFC Championship game before the season, which I feel like people didn't know what to make of this team. And I wish I had just picked them to win it all for 3 straight years, because I finally would have been right. And that was the dumbest thing I saw, by the way, because I'm old enough to remember NFL.com's cover story before that Seahawks Super Bowl, Bo, was, does Peyton Manning cement himself in the GOAT race with a win today? Because that was the thought. At that point, it's not that long ago, people gave Manning the edge because it had been 10 years before, since Brady had won 1. He was quote unquote stuck on 3, and Manning's individual stuff was in the Broncos that season, and their offense was so much higher that generally people thought the greatest of all time, at least between Manning and Brady, was Manning. And they were almost mid-30s at the point. It felt over. That's why that's the stupidest thing ever, because Patrick Mahomes not even 30. Let this play out. At this point, it's just got to be him versus Brady, and he hasn't even gotten to Brady's best decade. Hell, Brady's best decade was 34 to 44. So you can't expect Mahomes to do that, but it could. So let's just put a pin in it a little bit.
Yeah, I think from if you could zoom out, it will be fun to kind of see what the next iteration of the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs are, post chasing Kelsey. How are they going to reform the offense? How is he going to become a different player? I think that's a very fascinating story.
And look, it's not good for him. It will be remembered that he had 2 of his worst games in the Super Bowl. That was another kind of takeaway I had rewatching. It was everyone's just going to put it on everything around Mahomes. He was bad. I mean, he legit panicked.
I don't remember ever seeing him like that in the pocket, really looking uncomfortable.
He likes to play with people around him, and the way that they did it, he did not like it anymore. He essentially fritzed out. He held the ball a couple times when actually there were throws. They weren't open, but you just would thought that he would try to rip it. He played one of the worst games of his career, and considering the context, easily the worst game of his career in that spot. So he deserves a little bit of that. Getting blown out twice in the Super Bowl, that didn't happen to Brady. Their teams were always close. They did get blown out in a divisional round game or 2, though. So things happen. It's
right. I mean, yeah, everybody says it, but the worst season of his career was the AFC Championship game results-wise. That's pretty good.
Right. And it's you should get extra credit for playing well against the Texans and playing well against the Bills before having the worst game.
Right.
Brady shouldn't get somehow put higher because he got waxed by the Ravens in that 2009 game, which at the time I thought was the end of the Patriots dynasty. They were booing him out of Foxborough in 2009. And then literally the next year they had the best offense for about the next 7 straight years in aggregate. It was crazy. So we kind of need to see that out of Mahomes, though. It's been a couple quiet years, in terms of his regular season performance, and that gets us to ranking these teams. Let's do
I'm
this.
excited to hear how this goes.
Okay, so this was last minute. I did not spend nearly enough time on this, but it's one of those exercises I feel like if you spent all the time and if you spent almost no time, it wouldn't improve at all. So you're going to comment to me on what you think of my rankings here. I decided to do it from the Ravens in the Superdome just as a cutoff. So that's the last 12 seasons.
That's 2012. So isn't that 13 seasons? Am I wrong?
Yeah, because I'm throwing the Ravens in
13
there.
seasons. Okay.
Part of the reason is they're actually my worst Super Bowl champion. And again, I'm thinking about just line them all up in a given week. You obviously get extra credit from how you're playing at the end of the season and in the Super Bowl and in the postseason. But all these teams were playing awesome. They won the freaking Super Bowl. Like there isn't one that I looked at was like, oh, they just got lucky like game after game after game. And so in the end, the 2012 Ravens, Joe Flacco's your quarterback. I mean, he was playing at an outrageous level then. And that was one of the worst defenses the Ravens have ever had. And they somehow strung together a playoff run in which they didn't even play that well on defense the whole time, but they got enough stops. And they almost gave up the biggest comeback in history against the 49ers, but they got enough. So they're a great team, but they're at the bottom of my list.
They're 13. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you are ranking the quarterbacks themselves, would Flacco be at the bottom? Is it this version of Jalen Hurts? Like everybody else
I would say that version of Peyton Manning would be at the bottom.
Okay.
And so they're part of my next two are the 2018 Patriots and the 2015 Broncos. Now, if you're just ranking defenses, I know Broncos fans will get mad. They would be right there with the Eagles and the Seahawks as the three best defenses over this stretch. But I feel like if you're that imbalanced and you kind of look at their run that they went through, they were going against like a horrible, one of the worst Patriots teams that ever made it to a conference championship with Steven Jackson at running back. And like not even, it was just like, all it was Brady and Gronk. And then they get absolutely smashed in the Super Bowl. You get taken down a peg if you lose by 35 points. And that Patriots team, while they showed up, had a great playoff run, like they had they got waxed a couple times that year. It was the Patriots dynasty on fumes, just cranking it up one last time. I think if you just put them on the field against their other Patriots teams, against all these other teams, they might struggle. They might struggle a little bit.
The one bit of prep I did for this was I just looked at all of their point differentials from including the regular season and the playoffs together.
Uh-huh.
And just for the record, that 2015 Broncos team was at the bottom. So I think that the numbers reflect you there.
Thank you. And Patriots fans, it's tough to separate them all because that playoff run was pretty great. They did put up like 40 back-to-back weeks out of nowhere against the Chargers and the Chiefs, having to beat Mahomes in his first time. And then the defense suddenly shows up and holds the Rams to 3. So it showed they were balanced, but overall, not like an amazing team. All right.
Young Philadelphians will need to take your notes on like how to go about differentiating between all the different teams that went to the Super Bowl.
And they'll have to here because, all right, these next – I had a hard time separating these four teams, but they're in my next four. All right. The 23 Chiefs are the next lowest team on this list. They had a crazy good playoff run, but they had like a 3-5 stretch during the season, and the offense really wasn't that great, even though you had Mahomes. Very good defense, though. 2017 Eagles, this is where they show up. By the time they finished that season, they could beat anyone. Obviously, they did it. They were dangerous. But, if Julio Jones makes that catch and a couple things little happen, and certainly looking over the regular season, this is where I put him. Then here's the 22 Chiefs. Of the latter two Chiefs teams, like this is the one where the offense was much more efficient, not as explosive, but a very good offense, and the defense stepped up late in the year. And then
we'll quickly say on the
yes. And then the 2016 Patriots, sneaky great Super Bowl. This was actually 1 versus 2 in terms of DVOA. The Falcons were number 1 in DVOA that year. I don't think of that Patriots team as like that unbelievable, the one that made the comeback there, but they were pretty great. So those are my next pack. You can give me any thoughts on those.
You will be surprised to know that 2016 Patriots team had the second best point differential of all these teams.
Okay.
And then I was just going to say on the 17 Eagles, I think this is where the disparity between the scope of the entire season and the way they're playing at the end matters, because over the course of the season, they blew out all kinds of teams when Carson Wentz was healthy. They're fourth on this list
True.
of
That's
point
true.
differential. But the Nick Foles iteration did not really come together until those last two games. I mean, that team, there's a magic to that team, but I think even, Chris Long said on his podcast that if his team lined up against the team from, Sunday night, he thinks they're not winning that game.
So, yeah, I'm trying not to also be a homer, because that was a really good Falcons team that ultimately they had a hard time slowing down for much of that game, but they did when they needed to, in a great Patriots offense. That's interesting on point differential. I think they had a very easy schedule that year. I weirdly remember they were just like beating up on all these bad teams. All right, I'm into my top four. Number four, and these four I could rearrange in any way. Number four, the 2019 Chiefs. Ultimately, it's the best Mahomes. It's the best Chiefs offense. I think offense matters more. And then I look at the top three teams on this list, and I start wondering, maybe offense doesn't matter more. So they were a pretty hard four for me. Do you think that's right to put them as the best Chiefs team? That's one.
I think so. And you're reminding me of my reaction after the 22 Super Bowl, when the Chiefs beat the Eagles, which was that, I don't know, maybe defenses don't matter. Because that was a good Eagles defense and they didn't do anything against a very good Chiefs offense. But I guess my opinion has changed over the past couple of weeks.
I know that's the thing that's crazy is some
it's
of these
just,
teams.
I actually think you frame this well. It's that there's a difference between like the number one defense, a great defense, and then like the difference between the number 4 defense and the number 25 defense is very minor. Like you either have a great defense or a terrible defense, and everybody else is sort of in between.
That's the thing with the 2016 Patriots. Like they had a good enough defense. They obviously could game plan well, but the team like the Falcons go up and down on them. The 22 Chiefs that happened, like that Eagles Patriots game, in theory, that Super Bowl had pretty competent defenses, and they were literally two of the worst defenses in the history of the sport. All it was yardage. It was like 1,100 yards.
The three worst, I believe Sheil Kapadia has, it's like the three worst Super Bowl defensive performances since 2000 are like both defenses in that game, and then the Eagles defense in 2022.
Wow. So yeah, maybe those 22 Chiefs, maybe I'm not giving them enough love because their defense by the end was playing well, but then it didn't in the Super Bowl, didn't much of the season. And this is where I really struggle. So I think the three best Super Bowl winners since the last time it was in New Orleans are the 24 Eagles, the 13 Seahawks, and the 14 Patriots. When I wrote it down, that actually was the order. It might be recency bias because I had the Seahawks there for most of it. And then you think about the 2014 Patriots, and that is what my heart wants to say. But if you go through just position by position, I think this Eagles team has a case to be made of where they are right now and the way that they finished this season.
I think the finish of the season is crucial here. And if you're weighing like how they were playing at the end, boy, does that matter. They won the championship game and the Super Bowl by a combined 50 points, which is the third highest in NFL history behind the 84 Bears and the 89 Niners.
And I don't even count that because it should be 66 points or whatever. Like that game was 40-6.
Like you could say, well, like maybe the Commanders were not quite championship game caliber. And I do I wish that we had gotten to see them play the Lions just to see that matchup. But I mean, 50 points is 50 points, and the Super Bowl game was insane. I do just from a talent standpoint, and that is the story of this team, is that they are just so talented. You look at the season they played, and you could say they played like 4 complete games all year long, and they still, they only lost 3 games, and they played their best football at the end of the season, no doubt about it. And in the Super Bowl, as we talked about, in a game where like Saquon Barkley, who was the star of the season, gets mostly muted, like they still put up 40 points and dominate. And I'm glad to hear you put them at that level, and it's not just me who was so close to the team.
I think
it's
the only reason why I wanted to do this exercise.
Yeah.
It's the reason I wanted to do this exercise. I was like, there's no way there's more than 3 or 4 that are better. And then I went through it, and it's funny because I'm looking at one note card. I had them first. On the other, I had the This is why I would be bad at being on one.
You could argue the Seahawks, yeah.
I haven't really made up my mind. Here's the case for the Seahawks. they had a good case, kind of like the Eagles this year, where even the losses they had that season were very close. Which actually, the Eagles did have that one decisive loss. It was back in Week 4 against the Bucs. But the Seahawks, all their games were close. They had a great postseason run. They beat the Packers. It was a very good Packers team, pretty convincingly. They beat a really good 49ers team in that NFC Championship. That was tight, but it was good. And then you have that Super Bowl, which finishes in a similar way to this one. And you look at the players that are on this team, and it's mostly defense. Like, that was the year that Legion of Boom actually finished number 1 in defensive DVOA. That was their best defensive season. And all these potential future Hall of Famers showing out against a historic offense, scoring-wise, in the Super Bowl. The one thing you could hold against them is over the course of the season, 10th in offense, is 2013 Russell Wilson, at the level of a Brady or Mahomes. Like, no, he's obviously not. Neither is Jalen Hurts, although Jalen Hurts, is playing excellent in the postseason. So is Russell Wilson. But, the quarterback, maybe the offense is a little lower, but, you got Marshawn. There's a lot going with that team. That is an awesome team. It's tough to make a case against them.
I think that if I'm thinking about like how that game would actually play out, I mean, Marshawn Lynch is so awesome, but I just don't think anybody was running on this Eagles defense. And so I think, like, I feel pretty good about that side of the matchup from the Eagles. On the other side, like, I mean, I'm not saying they could put up 40 on the Legion of Boom, but I think between having multiple, because they have answers on Saquon and the guy and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside, I feel like they would be able to find more answers than
well, if anyone would have answers, it would be that Seahawks team in the passing game. I think they would make Jalen Hurts look closer to the regular season Jalen Hurts. And so then it would come down to, like, which defenses can make big plays and which team could run the ball maybe a little better. Like, between Saquon and Marshawn Lynch, like, who actually gets it done?
How many Hall of Famers on that Seahawks team? Do you know offhand?
I mean, Earl Thomas isn't even getting close, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Right now, no, I think he should.
He should be, yeah.
I feel like he was I think he was eligible this year and he didn't even make the finalists. Like, let's take us back to how people actually thought about it back then. He was the best safety in the league easily for a number of, like, come on.
Hall of Fame caliber players. We're talking like Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Russell Wilson,
a very
Marshawn
young
Lynch,
Bobby Wagner just starting out.
Bobby Wagner, yep.
Michael Bennett won't get the credit, and neither will Cliff Averill, but they're like closer to Jalen Carter level than they are to Josh Sweat, the way they were playing at that point. That was a completely sick edge duo. And then, like, really good offensive players too, like a good offensive line. You have obviously Baldwin at receiver, maybe not as good at receiver, but still a very good team.
And then this Eagles team, you've got Lane Johnson, AJ Brown, Saquon potentially. Maybe Jalen Carter you think is on that path, and then there's obviously Tanner McKee.
And then the case for the Patriots, which I think is a strong one. At first I had them first. That year was like a collision course all season. Patriots Seahawks is the best Patriots team that they had since 2007. Balanced, top 5, 6 in offense and defense. Very good on offense, especially Brady basically in his prime, which that's an edge over Russell Wilson and Jalen Hurts. And they ended up beating the Legion of Boom, the number 1 defense, coming off that title, trying to win 2 in a row. Their offense was better that year as well. So that year was great. It reminded me of Saints Colts when they played in the Super Bowl, where it was the clear number 1 offense versus the clear number 1 defense. And both teams are great around them, great head coaches, obviously a great ending. And they had to come back in that game. Like that, there's a case there for the Patriots.
Yeah, I think it depends what you're measuring. Like, I think that is a more impressive, string of defeats than the Eagles had in the playoffs potentially.
They also waxed Andrew Luck Colts like 45-7 in the AFC Championship. So very similar type of championship game performance to the Eagles against a team that was just overmatched. A similar divisional round where the Eagles, scraped through, and I wonder what the Rams are thinking about today. By the way, like they're the only team.
That's the one. You mentioned the Julio Jones play from the 2017 season. I mean, that's the one what if from this Eagles run is, if Jalen Carter doesn't make those 2 plays at the end of the game, do the Rams go and score? And maybe they do.
That's the thing is like all these teams, even in the top 4, if you look at like the 2019 Chiefs, they're down 10 late in the third or going into the fourth against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. The Patriots were down 14 points twice in the divisional round and have to start like almost breaking the rules with the types of plays they're coming up with against the Ravens to like somehow come back in that game and like scrape through. All these teams have close calls. The Seahawks had it against the 49ers.
Did you think about who was the best of the Super Bowl losers?
No, the Eagles would certainly be up there. I think the 2017 Patriots would be up there.
Yeah, I think the 2014 Seahawks that you talked about as well.
They would be up there. I think the first 49ers team that lost would have been up there. But man, this is stupid offseason stuff. I'm happy to be in the offseason.
Football's back, as they say.
Funny you say that. And so, I started the show and just started saying that because that's like just a stupid bit I had that like people are always saying football is back like through every point of the off season, and that would be like a fun little outro there, and just kept going with it. But football's not back now. I don't think I can keep using it. I think
you're retiring it.
I think it's done, right? I mean,
it served its purpose.
It had fun.
What's the will you go footballs forward?
I don't know. It's a problem that I am solving in real time. You're making me panic. But I do want to talk a little bit
football
about the offseason. I'm excited about this time of year specifically. Like it's a pretty mad dash to the combine. We're less than 2 weeks away from the combine, and it's like free agency, like franchise tags start next week. I'm gonna do a tag primer tomorrow, just like going over who's getting tagged, who's not, with Nick Shook. Pretty soon the top 101 free agents are going to be out. We're going to do some off-season previews, and then free agency's here in like 4 weeks essentially. And so it's kind of a mad dash to get there. And this is I'm calling this Gregg season.
Gregg season.
Yes.
How about Gregg season's back?
Jordan
Gregg is back.
Jordan set that up for me that it's just like, all right, this is Gregg season. So I am fired up. I'm hoping everyone stays tuned in on these daily shows. Bo, what a feeling. It's got to be for you. You kind of won the Super Bowl. It's got to be good for the downloads, good for the business. It's not bad to cover a champion.
You know what's funny is we did so much work last week, right? We did 9 shows over the course of the thing. God, I was like up till 5 a.m. on Sunday night writing. And the one piece of feedback I got from the higher ups is I also took a video of Jalen Hurts, sitting in the hallway with the Lombardi Trophy as he's smoking his cigar. It's like a 9-second video, and it was like, "Hey, great job with that video." And it's like the most downloaded video in the history of All City. And it's like, wow,
yes!
You know what? This is what we do, baby. It's all for that.
Well, it if nothing else, it pays for your trip and then some and then some.
There you go.
You should convince them like, hey, send me every year. I can get you videos like that.
I got all kinds of 9-second videos in me. Yeah.
Even if the Eagles don't make it. I mean, I can only imagine, how much you're going to be crushing your co-host Zach Berman on a daily basis. I can only imagine how obnoxious the Eagles fans are going to be. Like, what is this next week? What is this next year going to be like before I say goodbye to you for these Eagles fans in the city of Philadelphia? Because that wasn't just like a plucky upstart now. You guys you're 2-time champions, 2 out of 3 years making it. You got to feel great about what's coming up next year and the next few years. Give me just a quick preview of what Philadelphia, like how obnoxious we can expect the Eagles fans coming into stadium is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, as obnoxious as it gets. That's there's pride in the obnoxiousness. We got the parade on Friday, moved because of impending rain, so that'll be fun. And then, yeah, I mean, I think I would expect that if the Eagles come out slow in the first half of week 1, expect the booze to rain down.
So things are going to change, but they will be atop those power rankings. Let's hit the music, please. Just rambling over here. Like I said, I'll be back on Thursday. It's going to be with Nick Shook. We also have a great interview with Kobe Turner, but we talk a little franchise tag on that show. And when you're doing the franchise tag primer right before Valentine's Day, it's Gregg season. I can't stick with that one. That's terrible.